Great, thank you. I've got one in here, but thank you very much. And in many ways, that said it in a nutshell, because I basically think that acupuncture is a mindful practice. I just want to say a little bit about me, and then I want to hear just a little bit about you, but I want to then move on so that we're doing whatever we're doing with the mindfulness. But just to say, I started meditating when I was 19, and I'm now 66. And I joined a group at that time, and I was following, it was in the 70s, let's face it. So, and I can get from your laugh that you all understand that. And that was a very important time for me, and I learnt to meditate because I was involved in this all the time, and I was involved for about 5 years altogether. But then I stopped doing that, but I've kept meditating to some degree in different ways ever since. Doing Aikido, which had meditation around it as well, and then doing a lot of Qigong. But then in about 2002, I started doing Vipassana meditation. And they do silent retreats, and I went on quite a few silent retreats, and I've done that ever since. And Vipassana would be said to be a mindful practice. And I'm very committed to it. And I must say, I really love and enjoy meditation. It's not always enjoyable, but it is something I love doing. So that's the main thing. But I also have just finished, it's very ironic, I've just finished doing a degree at Coventry University, of all things. It's an MSc in mindfulness. And on top of that, I got my results today. How's that? It's quite amazing, isn't it? That's kind of like, these things coming together. So I'm very pleased about that, because it does mean I've passed my MSc. So I can say I've got an MSc. Okay, so that's me. I've got some questions to ask you. First of all, I'd like to know how many of you have done some meditation before. So I thought there'd probably be a lot of you that have. Yeah, okay. Now, I'd like to also know how many of you still meditate. Right. So I also want to know how many of you have meditated but you don't meditate anymore. Oh, so most of you do still meditate. Okay. So for those who don't meditate anymore, I'd just like to know what stopped you meditating, if there was anything particular. So, yeah?
When I have time, then I do more focusing.
Okay, yes. I didn't say, I also teach something called focusing, which is very meditative and puts us in touch with what's happening inside us emotionally. And I taught focusing. So, okay, great, thank you. Yeah.
Now, 2 small children.
Okay, fair enough.
I should meditate, but...
It's that kind of, I will do, but I haven't got time right now. Yeah, okay. Anybody else want to say anything? Yep, Mary.
Well, as you know, you and I did the
We
same.
were in the same group all those years ago. Yes.
Coming to see you as a patient in 76, and we sat and meditated together before we treated them. So, I like you left that particular movement, and because I wanted to disassociate myself with that particular teacher, I stopped meditating, and now, years on, I still use the techniques that I was taught, because actually they work for me. And it's distant enough now because I don't have an association with the teacher that I had then. So I sort of come back to where I was
full circle.
before, without all the baggage that I had then. So.
Yes. Thanks, Marek. So, yes, it was all those years ago that we were meditating in the same group. I'm not going to ask you any more because I don't want to spend too much time going back and forth. But I'm just going to tell you the outcomes for this session, what I'm planning. I'm going to give you an overview of mindfulness. A lot of you might already know some of this stuff, but hopefully I can also talk about some things you might not have heard of. I'd just like to know, who's done an 8-week course in mindfulness? Aha, not so many. Okay, because so this will kind of tell you a bit about that. I'll also do some practical mindfulness exercises, and I'll put those in the context of how we might use them in our practice. Hope that's okay? Okay. So some of the exercises I'll do are to do with breathing, our thoughts, body scanning, being mindfully active. When I put all this together, I realized actually that I had too much, you know, you can't do a whole MSc and then kind of, I had much too much information here. So I've just put something about mindful listening. We won't have time to do the exercise, and I'm a little bit scared. You can't do mindfulness and do it quickly, but on the other hand, how am I going to put all this in without running out of time? So I've got to work that one out. And I want to do all of those, but maybe I'm not going to be able to do all of them. I must say, for me, doing the MSc in mindfulness, one of the things that's really changed for me is this. The compassion practice, in many ways, I was never interested in doing compassion practice. And it's been a mind blower for me how important and how lovely it is to do compassion practice, and how much. And I know this from the research, because if you do an MSc, you look at that. Compassion practice really, really, really does change people, masses. So we'll talk more about that later. Okay. So some of these exercises we can teach to our patients as well as maybe they'll be useful to you. So first of all, there's lots of different meditations, and obviously you're doing a lot of different meditations. So what do we mean by actual mindfulness? Because mindfulness has become something that you get mindfulness colouring books now, don't you? You know, mindfulness is a hip word to use. So we have to be a little bit careful with it. But on the other hand, it has got a huge spectrum in terms of its meaning. But this is the meaning that was given by somebody who I'll mention in a minute, called John Kabat-Zinn, who put mindfulness out there for lots of people to learn. And he's got quite a nice definition. It's awareness, I think the word awareness is really important, because mindfulness makes you think that you're doing something with your mind. Well, you're not. You're becoming aware and actually getting into your body. So it's awareness by deliberately paying attention. So paying attention on purpose is what he said. In the present moment, so being very present as you're doing things, and not judging the experience you have of that, which is tough. I want this to happen. That's not going to happen. I don't like that. I mean, learning to, and you know, I do want to say I might have done meditation for a long time, but I'm not like some of these people out there who've done masses and masses. I have definitely get into this one. But what mindfulness does for me is it helps me to kind of bring myself back, and that's what I find really useful. So not judging our experience as to whether it's right or wrong, just being non-judgmental. So that's a really good definition, I think, of mindfulness. So we are not kind of putting our thoughts out of our minds or anything like that. We're actually paying attention to whatever comes up. So it is very much doing something deliberately, looking at what's coming up as it is. And anybody, some of you have learnt focusing, and I know that you will kind of notice that focusing is a bit like that as well. You turn towards what's there rather than turn away from it. Some people talk about mindfulness as being in being mode rather than doing mode. And to me that's a bit like this radical for the heart, which is an empty space. And I might have said this before to some of you, the heart organ is the only organ that doesn't have what we call a flesh radical. It doesn't have a physical thing because it's an empty space, it's nothing. And if you can really be in your heart, you are very, very spacious. And it's kind of being in just being. Now we can't just be all the time because we wouldn't get anything done. So we have to be in doing mode some of the time, but it's how we are in doing mode that's the important thing. So mindfulness is rooted in Buddhism, And it's definitely a part of Buddhist practice in one, at one extreme, and it's now become a popular term. And it's partly because of the positive effects of a lot of the research that's been done on it. So what are the benefits? And I'm not going to kind of go into these in great detail now, but there are a lot of benefits, and research has shown a lot of benefits. So in daily life, there's a lot of research saying that it brings greater resilience and greater well-being. And possibly one of the main things that is shown from mindfulness research is that well-being that's there. So that leads to people being able to handle stress better, because if you're stressed, if you can turn towards it instead of saying, "Ooh, I don't see that," that really helps you to handle it, funnily enough. Better concentration can come from that, better focus, and greater creativity and greater compassion. There's loads more things than that, but I've just put a few things up. And an improved ability to listen. Now, all of those are useful to acupuncturists, but I've also put down what it can do for us in our practices. It can give us much better perception skills, and I think it's very interesting because John did his seminar about perceiving the face and how slowing yourself down makes you more perceptive. Being more mindful is an obvious thing to do, and doing some mindfulness practice in order to become more perceptive. So it gives us the ability to accept whatever comes up. Our patients don't always come in with what we want them to come in with, do they? They can say, "I've had a dreadful week, and it's been ever since you gave me the last treatment." And what do? We go, "Ooh, what have I done?" Or something like that. It might have nothing to do with it. But that ability to just say, "Okay," and stay with that rather than turning away from it. There's loads of things in our practice we need to, we're better off if we just accept them, but rather than react to them. Increased ability to be there for our patients. So rather than having an agenda, I want to ask about this and this and this, we can spend some time just being there, listening, allowing our patients to say what they need to say. And often that is more satisfying for the patient than anything else, because they don't want to be fixed necessarily. Most patients, first of all, at least, they want to be heard. And it gives us that ability to really hear our patients. It improves our diagnosis and our treatment skills, because the more mindful we are in the treatment room, the more we can allow what we need to do to come up. So it helps me, I know, to plan my treatments and allow kind of, as I'm with myself, then something often arises. The more we enjoy our practice, the less risk there is of burnout. And they've done that. All of these things have been researched in terms not of acupuncturists, but in terms of nurses and physios and occupational therapists and all sorts of health professionals. And they found that this has been the results that have happened. So this isn't me just saying it. This is actually what the research has found. And increased compassion for patients. And at the end of this PowerPoint, I've put the research down for this. You can't do an MSc without doing all of those kind of things. But it will be on the BACC website where that research is. So what I'm saying is that acupuncture is a mindful practice. And our practice becomes more satisfying the more mindful we are when we do it. And carrying on that acupuncture is a mindful practice, I just want to say, actually, this book is a really brilliant book. It's by Stephen Birch. I don't know if any of you know this book. Some of you will. It's got a lot of things from the classics, and it's got a lot about how being aware, and a lot of things that skills and attitudes we might have. So alertness, concentration, calmness, all affecting our mind and spirit. The classics are very clear that that's important. And also grounding ourselves, aligning our bodies, they're also clear that's very important. So presence and awareness arise from those things. So being mindful arises from that. And just a couple of quotes, which you might know. Those who are going to examine the illness must calm their minds when observing the patient without looking to the left or the right. That comes from the Ling Shu, which is a lovely quote. It's quite interesting because being in the now, you are just with yourself. This is NLP. Very often people, when they've got their timeline, their past is on their left and their future is on their right. So I don't know if that's what, we do kind of looking back on things, looking forward on things, or are we in the present moment? So just a point to ponder about what that means. Whenever the physician treats, he has to be mentally calm and his disposition firm. There's more to that quote, but that's the Sun Si Mao quote. Most of the old Chinese doctors understood the art of mindfulness when we practice and how important it is. So, we're going to do some different things, but before we start, what I'd like you to do is just take a partner, somebody next to you, somebody close by, and one of you finds large intestine 4 on the other, and the other one then finds lung 9 on the other, and do it as you would do it with a patient. Okay, just take a couple of minutes. And notice how you've done. Oh, I wonder. Sorry? Great, looks very nice actually, yeah. Oh, thank you. And when one of you's done it, swap over so you both get a chance to do it. Have you both done it? Have you all done that? Don't want to have a... Okay. Okay, have you all done that? Okay, come back. Don't think everybody's quite finished. But if you're still finishing, carry on finishing. I just want to say, and I've just been reminded, this is being filmed, and if any of you don't want to be, I better make sure I get this right, don't want to be on the film or recognised on the film, please can you, I don't remember your name.
It's Graham.
Go and see Graham afterwards and he'll make sure that you're not. So if you've got any qualms about being on a film, please, this is GDPR and everything else, so please do make sure that you let him know. Okay. Okay, so you've all done that. Just remember how you are when you did that, and we'll come back to it later. Okay? After all that. Okay. So, I just want to say a little bit more about, this is Daniel Goleman, and this man is called Richard Davidson. They've written, I think this is an amazing book. Has anybody ever seen this book? It's come out, and it's quite recent. It's called The Science of Meditation. Daniel Goleman is famous for writing a book on emotional intelligence. Are you aware of him? A lot of you are. And him and Richard Davidson, they've been meditators, and they did Vipassana about 40-something years ago, and they've been committed meditators ever since. Both of them, at the time they were doing it, it was doing things like that in the scientific world as academics was absolutely out of the question. So they had to kind of do it in secret almost. But over time, they gradually they were part of mindfulness being accepted. Richard Davidson, he runs a big centre, I can't remember the name of the university off the top of my head, but it is in brain research into mindfulness, which is the very best research that you can do. And he has looked at all sorts of different kinds of research, from new people doing meditation just for a few weeks to people who've been doing meditation for, and he counts the hours, for kind of 60,000 hours, which is a huge amount, and doing it for their lifetime. And I'm just say a little bit about how they describe it, because I think this is a good description of the spectrum of mindfulness that we see. They describe it as the deep and the wide, and the deep at level 1, they talk about, this is the level, and this is from their research. At that level, this is people who are probably Buddhist monks and nuns and what they call Buddhist yogis. And they're people that have totally committed their whole life to Buddhism and meditation. And that's really all they do. And the findings that Richard Davison particularly has had from the research is just out of this world, what kind of things have happened to them. Most of us aren't, all of us are not, we've got our practices, we've got lives, we're not going to be able to be like those monks and nuns. But it is fascinating hearing about that, and I'll say something more in a minute. Level 2 is Buddhist practice with the kind of adaptations there are to the West. But this is Buddhist practice, you could say. So people that are pretty committed, regularly meditate, and they're doing quite a lot of meditation. But it's not anything like this. And so that is a kind of step, quite a big step down, because level 1, a lot of the people are really quite amazing. And then there's the wide, and this is the non-spiritual practice of mindfulness. This is what the man I just talked about, and I'll talk about in a minute, Jon Kabat-Zinn, put together. And Jon Kabat-Zinn, he kind of took it out of being a spiritual practice, and he put it into the kind of main world. And when you see these 8-week mindfulness courses, most of them come from Jon Kabat-Zinn's origin. And I'll say a little bit about him in a minute. So that's level 3. And then level 4 is short practices, apps, and all that kind of thing. People that do some meditation, but some of the time not other. So it's kind of still important that people are aware of meditation and aware of what it can do. But it's not at anything like those levels, especially all this level, maybe. So we're all at different, I mean, I don't know whether level is the right word, but we're all doing things in a different way. But it will have different effects according to how much we're doing, and that's what I want to emphasize. So just to say about this man, Jon Kabat-Zinn, he was actually on a retreat, and he suddenly had kind of one of those moments when he saw before his eyes what could happen to mindfulness and how it could, I'm feeling a kind of little tingly feeling in my head as I'm saying it, but it kind of how it could spread throughout the world, which it has happened. And it was almost like he had something come to him to say, this is where you should go. He worked in he got together a pain clinic in a hospital in Boston in the States, and he asked people to send all their patients who were difficult, couldn't get better, and were in pain. And he taught them mindfulness. And at that time it was a 10-week course. It's now usually an 8-week course, and it's now called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. So MBSR for short. And what happened was the results were quite staggering, and 65% of patients showed a reduction in pain. You have to remember these were the worst patients who never got better. Greater than 33% of the mean total, and there was a huge reduction in mood and disturbance. And one thing that came up is a lot of people's physical pain is actually, because of their mental pain or they're not liking the pain. And so this was one of the first inklings about what mindfulness might do in the world. So mindfulness-based, he did MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. From that came something called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, which was used to mitigate depression. And what they found when they researched depression is that it could stop people relapsing. You know, people might have depression, but people who are really severely depressed will relapse and relapse and relapse. And they found that mindfulness stopped people relapsing, and it was actually mindfulness and self-compassion that really made the difference. People being able to have compassion for themselves in their lives was what really made it was the difference that made the difference in terms of doing mindfulness. And then there's the deep. This person is called Matthew Ricard. He's quite an amazing man. He's been the translator for the Dalai Lama. He lived an ordinary life. He was very bright. He got a PhD, but then he decided he wanted to go off, and he went off to Tibet, and he found a teacher, and he lived with his teacher for many, many years. Most of his language was in Tibetan. He meditated for years and years and years on both compassion and mindfulness type meditation. And his brain was one of the cortex of the brain thickens when people meditate, and the amygdala in the middle of the brain, which looks out for threats, gets smaller. His brain was kind of stunningly different. When he was put on an EEG machine, there's different things out. You go into beta, alpha, gamma, delta, and then gamma is something most people get in little insights. When you have an insight, you go into gamma. What they found was that his brain was in gamma most of the time, and this was not only him, it was yogis, as they called them, who'd been meditating for many, many years. And they were in gamma even before they started the test. They didn't even switch it on. And what these people described was a spaciousness and vastness of experience that was completely different from our experience. And people can say that, but if you have research on your brain and it actually finds that, that's a different thing. And that's what this research, that's why I love this book. They go from kind of their experience to, and then they've got about altered traits and how people can actually change in their traits. None of us are going to do this much meditation, but it does mean that we can be just a tiny step on the way towards those kind of things. He scored significantly higher than any of the other people, although everybody who'd been doing very long-term meditations scored in a different way from other people. But he had, in the research, what happened came up, and he was big in the media for a while with them saying, is he the happiest man in the world? So he kind of got that reputation. But certainly, I heard him, he was kind of interviewed on the Today program, Radio 4 Today program, and everybody really loves this man. He's just completely compassionate, completely gorgeous. It's not like he's just a very loving, kind person. So, that's the results that we can see from mindfulness at that kind of level. So, he's written a lovely book, which I haven't got here, but it's called The Art of Meditation and The Art of Happiness, I think it's called. I think those books are really well worth reading. He's just, his compassion comes over in buckets full. So, that's that for the moment, and I'm now going to take you into an exercise, and we're going to do some breathing. So it's important to breathe, to be mindful of our breathing, I could say, because it helps us to be in our bodies. And if we're not in our bodies, we can't be mindful, because unless we are aware of our bodies, it's our mind that floats out and goes to the past or the future. Our bodies keep us in the present moment. So we can do it, this next practice, to enjoy the present moment. We can also help us to deal with stressful moments. It's something that we can teach to our patients, and it's called 3-stage breathing space. sometimes called 3-minute breathing space. So you can start with your eyes open, or you can have your eyes closed. And it's a bit like an hourglass, this. It's kind of out there, then we come inside, and then we go outside again. So 3 steps. So first of all, get yourself ready. Get yourself comfortable. And you don't have to change anything, but just notice whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, and whatever body sensations you have as you're sitting there. You might notice the chair that you're sitting on, but you might notice also any feelings you have inside, and let them be there. Any thoughts, if they're there, just that's okay. Now we're going to narrow down to your breath. For a few minutes, just focus on your breath as you breathe in and out. You don't have to do anything with it. Just feel your breath. You might feel the movement of your body as you breathe. You might hear your breath. You might feel your breath coming in and out. Don't change anything. Just let it be there. Now in your own time, come back to your body, feel your body, feel your posture, notice your facial expression that's there, notice any other sensations you feel, but at the same time keep that feeling of moment by moment presence that you had with your breathing. So you're going to bring that, what you did from your breathing, back with you into the present moment and into the room. And take all the time you need to do that and come back and open your eyes when you're ready. Feels nice and peaceful. Don't feel like I want to speak, but I will have to break that. So there's a lot of times that we can do breathing, and it doesn't have to be the whole 3-stage breathing space. It can just be feeling our breath. And I've realised since I've been kind of doing this doing the mindfulness course and doing Vipassana, that breathing is something that you can do any time at all. And there's so many times that we zone out. When we're, instead of kind of just allowing ourselves to be where we are, I'm sure most of you have been in a hurry and have been in a queue. Yeah? You wish the queue would move. Good time to breathe. Just because it's not going to change. If you're on a car journey, isn't that a time when we zone out? It's like we want to go from where we are to where we're going. And it's like the car journey itself doesn't exist. We kind of zone it out. And we lose our awareness. And yet, those are some of the very best times that we can stay aware and use that time to meditate in our daily lives. So, have you ever sat at your computer as it's downloading something? About 2 minutes, you know? Oh no! Good time to breathe. And those are little opportunities for us to be mindful. So we can become more aware at those times. And for those of you a lot of you meditate regularly, we always need that reminder, don't we? So I know I do. So even if you do it, that reminder is still a good thing. So rather than getting bored, rather than zoning out, we can change it to a mindful moment. And those mindful moments are at the very time we become mindful for that moment, can be a lovely feeling. And we can do this exercise as practitioners. I think it's a great exercise, and sometimes the 3-stage breathing space, between our patients. Because I don't know about you, it's very easy to have one patient, the next patient comes, and we've gone from one patient to another patient without doing anything. We only need to take a minute or two just to create a break between the two can have a huge effect, just from our point of view of being clearer about what's going on, but also going into the next patient with awareness. So this is great between patients. What about when our patients are late? We all have patients that are late. It's stressful, we don't like it, we've got a pile of other patients coming. Time to breathe. Or do the 3-stage breathing space and put ourselves in a good space. And I also think breathing is great when we are deciding on the treatment. I said mindfulness is great for planning, doing our diagnosis and our treatment. Just noticing our breathing as we're in the treatment room really does help to kind of put us in the space where sometimes those treatments just arise up within us. We just kind of have a knowing rather than I'm going to do this and this and this. I think that can really help that to happen more. So breathing in itself is a brilliant thing to be doing. It's the simplest part, you could say one of the simplest part of mindfulness, and we can use it in our practices so much of the time. And just to say a little bit about our thoughts, I say when we begin meditating, then I put in and later. We all get bothered by thoughts, but especially when we kind of start doing meditation, that's when the thoughts all come in, don't they? And have you ever had that experience of you're sitting down to meditate and suddenly all these thoughts come up? And it's not because there's more thoughts, it's actually because we're putting ourselves into a aware place and we're more aware of our thoughts. But we can easily go off on them and, oh no, and we kind of beat ourselves up or something like that because we're thinking and we want to be meditating. So often people kind of tell their minds to shut up, but actually part of mindfulness is just to say, okay, we've gone off with the thought, but when we realize we've had a thought, then that is a mindful moment. So we suddenly realize we've been thinking, we come back to our bodies, and at that very time, any mindful moment is a good moment to have, in my books anyway. So at that point in time, we can be very much in the present and know we're in the present. Does that make sense? Yeah. So bringing it back and enjoying that moment is a great thing to have. Just a thought, how much of the time we're alive do you think we truly spend being aware? I'm glad that you're all, because I know for myself, that's lifetime, that. Because, you know, we think we are aware, and most of you have done some meditation or something of that kind, and we think we're aware, but actually it's when we meditate we realize that we weren't aware most of the time, that we were kind of on automatic, and that's what we are, and we go out of that very easily. So the amount of time we spend actually being aware is minuscule. So even a mindful moment is an important moment, is what I'm saying. So you come out of your thoughts, you come back into your body, you've had a mindful moment. That moment is huge in terms of what it's doing for you, and it builds up. So Eckhart Tolle, who I actually love and most of you have heard of, I'm sure, wrote The Power of Now, definitely a brilliant book. He did this exercise, so I'm just going to do it with you. And so I'm going to, if you close your eyes for a minute, you don't have to close your eyes actually. What he suggested is say to yourself, I wonder what my next thought is going to be, and then just wait and see what happens. So say it to yourself, I wonder what my next thought is going to be, and see how that goes. And I assume that most of you have come back to thinking of things, so come back. Just wondering, how was that? Did you kind of go into a mindful space for a little while? Because it's kind of interesting, that kind of wondering, staying with it, kind of puts you in a mindful space. So it's just quite a useful little exercise to show you how you can be more mindful. So just to say, when we do the next practices, your mind is bound to wander around. If it does, don't shut it up. Don't think, oh God, I've been thinking. Just say, I've been thinking. You can acknowledge that. And then enjoy the mindful moment. Enjoy the post-thinking, the fact you've had some thoughts. And you might even notice, because I certainly know, how repetitive your thoughts are. They're the same old thing, same old thing. If you're worried about something, you notice it in everybody else. Oh, I'm putting on weight. Oh, that person. Yeah. So you know, you want to buy a certain thing. Oh, that person's got that thing. So it's all about us. Let's face it. So your thoughts are repetitive and are all about us, basically. So we're going to go on now. How's that been? Is that okay so far? So good? Yeah? Okay. So the parts of the 8-week mindfulness courses are breathing, body scanning, mindful movement. And also John Kabat-Zinn put in some yoga as well. And so I'm going to kind of just say a little bit about body scanning, because I think it is an important exercise. And just teach you a way to get into the body, because you know, body scanning is a good thing to do. Who does body scanning in their meditations? A few of you do. Yep. And we are actually losing our ability to feel our bodies. Not us necessarily, because we're kind of, but we are. We're all a bit numb. But a lot of people who are, a lot of our patients are on their computers a lot of the time, or on their phones, and what are they doing? Do they have a body? They are a head, they're a phone, and that's about it. They have no consciousness of their bodies at all. their ability to be in the moment is very, very limited if that's what they're doing. So for us as practitioners, we can help people to become more aware of their bodies and being able to be in the present moment with their body. I actually think acupuncture is a mindful practice for us, but actually acupuncture does help people to become more mindful. I don't know if you agree with that. So the very fact people have acupuncture puts them in touch with their body. It is their body that gets treated. So we can encourage that and help them to become even more... My phone! Excuse me. It's the last thing I want to have happen. I should have turned that off. Oops. Excuse me. Can you hold that so if it happens... Actually, I'd better turn it off. And yeah, okay, you turn it off. Thanks. Embarrassing. I didn't flap, did I? Yes, I did.
Just accept it.
Thank you. Thank you. So, we're becoming numb, like that. Pardon? Sorry.
Just joking if you mind.
So the other reason why we don't feel our bodies is because there's things in our bodies, our emotions get stored in our bodies, pain is felt in our bodies. We don't want to look at those things very often because they're painful. So it was interesting that the first research in the 1980s was done on people in pain. And was so successful. And so our patients will often kind of feel better from acupuncture treatment and feel better in their emotions and feel more able to go into their bodies. So we can encourage, as I said, that some more as well. But one way of going into our bodies is by feeling our extremities first. So this is a helpful way to help us to get into our bodies. Because if we just sit down to meditate and just sit down and think, right, I'll scan my body, without kind of preparing ourselves, what happens? Thoughts drift off. We need something to help us to get into ourselves. And this is also something we can do before we do pulses, needling, finding points, all those things. Because the more we are present in our bodies when we do those things, the better we're going to do them. So it's kind of helps us in that way as a mindful practice. So we're going to do grounding ourselves to the 5 extremities. And we ground ourselves in the face, the hands and the feet. And what I want you to do first of all is to make yourself comfortable. Get into a posture that feels comfortable for you. Is it too hot in here? Should we turn it down? Yeah. Can we open the window?
Okay, they're already open.
So actually, she's turning it down. Thank you. It is getting very hot, isn't it? Pardon?
You're not open very far.
Can we open them more? Oh, that's good.
If they'll stay.
Yeah. What happened is it was on. There was a wind going through here when I came in. It was very cold, and because we put it on cooler to air the room, and so I put the temperature up. I probably put it up too high. Can you do that, okay, Natalie?
Yeah, I'm going to get a hotel staff.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Not good for keeping awake, is it? Okay, so we're going to feel our face, our hands, and our feet, and then there is. This comes from Bill Ryan, who does. Sessions at the college on the art of feeling chi, and he gave us this, which I think is a really good exercise. And then the 6th extremity, as you're sitting, is either your buttocks or your dantian, in your lower abdomen. So, but I want first place to feel is your hands. Maybe I'll do it standing up. So notice your hands as you're sitting on the chair. eyes open or eyes closed, whichever you prefer. And as you're noticing your hands, notice whether you're feeling your hands just as your hands and the sensation, or whether you're imagining your hands as you're feeling your hands. And if you find you're imagining what your hands look like as you're feeling them, see if you can drop that imagining your hands and just feel the sensation of your hands, which is slightly different. Sometimes people feel tingling or other sensations. They might feel achy feelings in your hands. There's lots of possibilities. Notice just the sensation. Keep your imagination out of this. Now, once you're feeling your hands and just the sensation of your hands, go to your face. If it's easy to stay with your hands and go to your face, stay with them. If you prefer to drop the hands and just go to the face, then do that. And as you feel your face, notice any sensations when you feel your face. So you might feel tightness, those kind of sensations. You might feel places contracting. You might feel a relaxation in some places, tightness in other places. Whatever's there, accept it. No need to change it. That's how it is. So you're turning towards what's there. And now we're going to the feet. Notice your feet. However they are on the ground, keep them as they are. Notice what they're like. And now notice, are you imagining your feet as you're feeling your feet, or are you just feeling what's there in your feet? Often people can feel their hands because we use them a lot, but when it comes to their feet, it's a little bit of a surprise, and their mind automatically puts pictures in. Notice if you're putting in a picture and just feel the sensation. If you can't even feel anything at all, notice the nothingness. That's being aware. That's your starting place. What's there? You might feel some toes, but you might not feel all your toes. But that's what's there. If you can feel your hands and your face and your feet together, that's great. But if you want to concentrate on just one area, that's great too. And you might feel your buttocks because you're sitting. Notice how much of those areas feels comfortable to feel at the same time. You might go between your face, your hands and your feet. You might feel all of your face, your hands and your feet and your buttocks. You might find you're going more into your body as you're doing this. Whatever's happening is what should be happening right now, in this present moment. Exactly what's happening now. If you have any thoughts, acknowledge the thoughts, come back to being in your body. Have a nice mindful moment of being completely present, moment to moment. And when you're ready, you can, if you've got your eyes closed, a lot of you have, then come back to the room. I'm quite interested, how was that in terms of feeling your bodies? Did you get any surprises? I saw you wrap up with that cardigan, yes. It's going a bit cool, isn't it? Yeah. It makes a change. Let's just accept the present moment. Yes.
I was surprised how vividly I felt my hands compared
Yes.
to the rest of my body.
Yeah. I think that, did other people notice that? We can feel our hands very well, most of us. And we are using our hands a lot of the time as acupuncturists. But so yes, and the rest of us often doesn't feel nearly, we could get to the stage where we can feel everything very vividly. So
It felt a bit like peeling back layers though, as your attention rested there, more and more sensations slowly filtered through.
yeah, and that's the being present and the slowness of that. We don't get that quickly. It comes with time. So
And it was instant.
absolutely, yeah, thank you.
I have these funny kind of little body jerks.
Did you?
Yeah.
You know what that is? You're releasing a bit of tension.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it's nice. So if you feel a bump, 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 did anybody else have that? Any kind of body jerks? You might have done, might not. But that's great. Tension's going. Yeah. Anything else that people noticed? Everything you noticed is what you should notice because it's what was there at that time. Yes?
I just realised how achy I feel.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. No, and that's really important. Isn't it better to know than to... Because part of you knows that anyway, don't you? So rather than push it away, you're feeling it. Yeah. Great. Okay. So body scanning, I mean, that's just feeling extremities to help get into the body. But once you're in your body, you can kind of... There's a lot of different body scan exercises, so I'm not going to go into a whole body scan with you, that you can do. But mainly what they do, there's so many different ones, are feeling your body, going down your body and up your body, making you more conscious of the present moment, basically, by scanning yourself. So just want to say that it is a useful thing to meditate, because if we don't meditate, then we can't be mindful. I learned on my MSc course, there's some people that go around saying you should be mindful in your daily life, but you don't need to meditate. I don't believe that myself, and I'm so pleased so many of you do meditation of various sorts, because unless you practice something, you're not going to be able to use it in your life. And if you can't use it in your life, then you can't use it in your practice. And they all go around affecting each other. And if you use something in your practice, then it helps you want to do it, sit down and meditate. The thing about meditation is when you first start meditating, and all of you have started at some point, it's really hard. It's a new skill, you get loads of thoughts, you sit there bored, you hate it. That's what meditation is like when you first start. And so that people need the warning of that, because after a few minutes, you're going, oh God, I wish this would finish. You're not getting any of the good effects of meditation at that stage. And you just have to be present to the horrible feeling when you start, when you first start meditating. That's what it's like. And the only way you can really do meditation well is to say, I'm going to commit myself to doing this every day. And even if you give yourself 5 minutes, but you do it every day, or 10 minutes and you do it every day, and you really make the commitment, it's just saying, I'm going to do it whether it feels horrible or nice or whatever it feels like. And that's what keeps people meditating. So, and a lot of you probably got well past that stage, so you know about it. So, just want to say a little bit about the Dalai Lama and mindfulness. Do you know how much he is connected to this thing of mindfulness happening as it is? He has had a huge impact. He hosts yearly meetings between Buddhists and scientists that are researching mindfulness. I've forgotten the name of it now, I had it in my head, the Life and something meetings. Anyway, he hosts those meetings, and he noticed that people were researching negative emotions, and he challenged the scientists to, first of all, to research positive emotions, and then he also said to research meditation of any kind. He's not kind of, he's you can tell that he's very, he's open to everything. He's an amazingly mindful, aware person. And any of you, I'm sure some of you have seen the Dalai Lama and know that. But he said, take it out of its religious context and test it rigorously and spread it to whoever might benefit. That was his challenge to these two guys, Goleman and Davison. And to really, he loves there being research on it, and he wants there to be as much research as possible. I'm in great admiration for the Dalai Lama and how much he's put in it, and what he's wanted has been really successful. So he's had a huge impact on that kind of thing. Interestingly enough, in the early days of him doing this, he was talking to somebody who was telling him that people in the West really don't like themselves, a lot of them beat themselves up, say horrible things to themselves. And he was shocked. He thought everybody loved themselves. And because he comes from Tibet and people aren't like Western people in Tibet. And the other thing is the word compassion in Tibetan means compassion for yourself as well as for other people. And he was told, well, actually, people think compassion is for other people, but not for yourself. And he said, oh, that's really strange. And so he said, we'll have to invent a new word. It'll be self-compassion. He invented that word. We think of it now as a kind of part of our normal vocabulary, don't we? But that came from the Dalai Lama. So that's kind of interesting. Just to say that mindfulness research, and this is partly, I put it in because it's to do with the Dalai Lama, in 2006, if you look at this, the 80s and the 90s right up to 2006, not much research going on. And then suddenly, it exploded. And if you look at, this only went up to 2017, 16, 17, there's over 1,200 studies being done in research. So that's how much it has really changed. And just say a little bit about some mindfulness research. I'm not going to say much about this. But one thing that has been researched is just 7 minutes of loving kindness meditation, feeling compassion, will change people's connectedness, their ability to be, their well-being. It's a small amount, but 7 minutes just doing that changes our brain. And it's an interesting thing and useful for practitioners, because as practitioners, compassion meditation is all about kind of looking at the feelings you'd have for a child, and that's the kind of exercise we're going to do in a minute. Just caring for a child. If you have compassion but you feel bad for the person, you have totally different response in your brain to if you have compassion and you feel good about the person and you just feel loving kindness for them. So a lot of the research into kind of loving kindness has found how important compassion meditation is, because it changes our brain in a really positive way. If we kind of see somebody and we just think, oh God, that's so awful, then that doesn't change our brain in the same positive way. So we need to learn how to do this more when we're with our patients. So I just want to say, there's a lot of different things, but Brewer found that when people meditated long term, then part of their brain became deactivated. This part of the brain, I can't remember the name of it, they used to test early meditators and found that it was very activated, and they thought, oh, this must be a part of mindfulness. They then tested long-term meditators and found it was deactivated, and it was all about their ability to not think so much as they had meditated for longer. But first, we are more activated. This is interesting. For every year of meditation over the age of 50, and it's long-term meditators, by the way, have brains apparently that are 7.5 years younger than other people, so keep doing it. But long-term meditators, their brains age less by 1 month and 22 days. Don't know how they get it that precise, but if you keep meditating, you won't age as quickly. And they've said what they call the epigenic genetic clock slows. That's all to do with aging less as you meditate. And there's loads of, I'm not going to go into all the physical conditions, but they're physical conditions as well as you might expect, psychological things, depression, anxiety, etc., change with doing mindfulness. And there's so much research on all different illnesses. Okay, now I plan to do something mindful walking. There's two things. One is that I want to do the compassion meditation because I'm really into it, and I realise I'm going to be running out of time. But I just want to say a little bit about this. So what I'd like you to do just for a minute is to feel those 5 extremities, like you did. And I was going to do this walking, but it's not enough room anyway. And just for a minute, when you feel ready, you can keep your eyes open for this. Notice what's in the room. Just notice the objects in the room. The speaker, the table, the flip chart. There's a kind of beamer. That there's other people, if you can see them. We're objects. Notice what's there in the room. Clock, the floor. Now swap and notice the space between the objects. Notice that this is made up of space with objects in it. So keep looking, but look at the space. Or look at the fact there is space. We're all connected by space. And when we're with our patients, one way we can connect is via the fact there's a space. And we can have a space between us that's connecting us. So we're not going to go into that anymore, but just to say that's a really important thing in terms of being with our patients. And we can sense that space as much or as little as we want. Does that make sense to you? So I'm sorry I can't go into it any more than that, but I think it's quite an important thing. Just to say about this lady, her name's Rose Gladden. She is a healer. She was a healer. She's no longer alive. I had the privilege of learning from her for a year at one time. And she, this guy Maxwell Cade used to measure people's brainwave patterns as they did. He worked especially with healers, and the mind mirror would kind of show the patterns. And a lot of healers, when they work, and I'm sure meditators too, their brainwave patterns became equal on both sides. People in normal states of consciousness, they're not equal. Rose Gladden, he found, had the most stable brainwave pattern of anybody, of all the other healers. And there was one particular time when they fixed her up to a machine in front of 600 people. She picked just somebody from the audience who was also attached to a different machine. And her brainwave pattern settled into this, which is a typical pattern for a healer. And then as she started working with her patient, the patient's brainwaves gradually came into the same pattern. Now I think that's stunning, really, because that's stunning for us as practitioners, that whatever we're doing, we are influencing people in that way. So the more mindful we are in the treatment room, the more we're going to be influencing how people are in the treatment room. It's not only that, that's happening, I'm talking about the space between us, that's happening in our day-to-day life. We know that we become attuned to some people or not to other people and things like that. When we become attuned, if everybody had what they call a mind mirror on them, and I'm dying to one day do more work with the mind mirror because I just think they're so amazing. John and I used to do biofeedback many, many years ago, and we had some sessions on this. But I just think this is a fascinating subject for research, how practitioners and patients come together in their brainwaves. So that's just another little ditty to be said. Okay, so just going to move this on to, just for a sec, what I'd like you to do is go back to your person that you marked the points on and do it again and see how you are doing it in a mindful way. Go back to that large intestine 4 and lung 9 that you did before. You forgot about that, didn't you? So you've done your mindfulness practice, bring that to feeling those points. Did that feel any different? Yes? What's the difference for you, if there was a difference? You feel more connected? Important. Yeah.
The whole room's a lot quieter.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. And when you say quieter, what do you mean? The energy is calmer somehow. I mean, whatever we mean by that for each other, but I agree.
It's done consciously than mechanically.
Yeah, thank you. So you did it more consciously rather than just did it. So the effects of mindfulness on your practice, I'm saying acupuncture is a mindful practice. The more you do it mindfully, the better you will do it. So I just want to demo that. I just want to spend a few minutes, it's the last 10 minutes we've got, doing some compassion meditation. Is that okay? It really has such an important effect. So I definitely want to do this. And this is a compassion meditation described by the person I described who's been a monk for all these years, called Matthew Ricard, the one I said about. So it's in his book that I've taken this from and adapted it. But there's also a lovely book called The 5 Side Effects of Kindness. And it says, and you might buy that book, it's a great book, got lots of good stuff in it. It makes you happier, it strengthens your heart, it slows aging, improves your relationships, and it's contagious. The more you're kind, the more everybody else is kind. So it's definitely a great thing to do more of. And if we practice compassion meditation, then we will generally be kinder and will spread kindness into the world. The sage does not hoard. Having worked for his fellow beings, the more he possesses, having donated himself to his fellow beings, the more abundant he becomes. And so by being compassionate, what do we do with all this stuff when we meditate? We give it out, we give it back, we give it to the world. So, and then it comes back. We're part of the world, so it comes back to us, of course. But we're not just doing it for that, we're doing it for the pure pleasure of giving. And that comes from the Tao Te Ching. So we're going to do a loving kindness meditation. And if you close your eyes, get yourself comfortable. Okay, so imagine that a young child approaches you. So this child is coming up to you now. And this child just is so joyous, so confident, and so full of innocence. And the child looks at you. And just get the feeling you have when that child comes up to you. And you can act it out or not, but you might stroke the child's head and tenderly take that child into your arms. And feel, to the extent you can, a sense of unconditional benevolence and love as you're holding that child. Let yourself be entirely pervaded by this love that wishes for nothing but her or his well-being, the child's well-being. And just keep that feeling going. Sustain it. If it declines, revive it. Just feel those feelings for that child for as much as you can feel them. And rest in the mindful awareness of that love. And you can send this loving kindness, first of all, to yourself. So that feeling you're feeling, let yourself have that feeling. Give it to yourself. And enjoy that feeling. And then without pushing or anything, just allow it to go to somebody else you feel tenderness and gratitude for. Anybody that pops up in your mind. Just only needs to be one person, but send them that tenderness, the gratitude, and wish with all your heart for that person to have happiness in their lives and that feeling in their lives. Or wish for as much as that wish can be there. And we can just for a moment get a sense of all of our patients. We don't have just a kind of fuzzy sense of them, and extend that to our patients. So we don't push it, we just know it can radiate from us. And in your own time, you can open your eyes as you come back into the room, but take your time to do that. And we can do that, whatever inspires loving kindness for us. It could be our younger selves that we give that to. Could be inspired by a lovely dog that we, there's all sorts of ways we can feel those feelings. I think this is the moment to stop. But thank you very much. Okay, so that's it. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope this just does a little bit to help you in your mindful practices. Great, thank you.